All right. I think that worked. All right. So tonight on struggle session number 2, I'm going to be attempting something that's really kind of complicated, and hopefully I'll be able to do it right. And that is be able to stream to a YouTube channel while having discussion take place in Twitter Spaces. So I'll be looking at the live chat, but if you want to actually converse with any of the people that are going to be discussing things tonight, I know I got somebody coming in in about an hour when he gets off work. And a few other people, I've already given them the link to join as asked. We'll see if they do. But if you actually want to join us, you have to actually go to Twitter, and the link is pinned to the live chat. So anyways, let's start off. I do have Squirrel in here. He has about 30 minutes, give or take, and he has some things to weigh in on. So I'm just going to start us off as far as the topic, which is transphobia versus fair criticism. And there's a lot of things I can bring to the table on this. The things that just happened just recently was dealing with some kid that's about 15 years of age winning homecoming queen, and 15-year-old boys playing on a sports team. Now, I think that is cheating, and I put it in on somebody. I put a reply into somebody that said this is cheating, and of course, the throngs of transgender ideologues that came in and just swarmed, basically just calling me every name in the book, including transphobe and everything else, but didn't address anything that I said, was pretty remarkable, because, again, not one of them actually addressed anything that I have to say. It's really just insults, and, of course, they throw around the pejorative of, oh, you're just a transphobe. So, anyways, make sure that the outside can hear me, because I don't know if they can. I always do an audio check. It looks like everything's fine on my end, but I always do an audio check. And then Squirrel, go ahead and say something. Let me see if they can hear you just as well. Sound good?
I'm definitely interested in this topic anyway, and the whole idea of lots of these trans things and all of these ideologies, I think is quite insane, and it's ludicrous that up until like a few years ago this wasn't that controversial, but today it's like the biggest thing ever. So
it wasn't that controversial because it never really happened. You didn't see this invasion of boys and men invading women's sports. I mean, I'm Gen X, right? And the thought of a dude, a senior year dude, wearing a dress to prom or something like that was like a one-off. It's supposed to be comical, right? I mean, granted, it's been done to no end, but nobody really cared. I know there's a lot of background noise. There's nothing I can do about it. It's just the fact that, he says sounds like a tunnel. That's something that I heard before when I was doing audio checks, and I listened to the back, and it did sound like I was in a tunnel, which is unusual for me. I understand the background noise. That's just my AC. But it did sound really hollow for some reason.
But Steve, if you see a bright light, don't go towards the light.
I try not to. Does it sound like a tunnel to you on your end when I'm talking?
Well, like I said, I mean, to me it's an AC unit, but your voice sounds fine. I can just hear the,
Okay.
It's just whatever is going on in the background.
That's because I can't do anything about it's too damn hot here. I have to have the AC on. But
don't worry about it.
If they can hear me, then I think it's just going to have to suffice for right now. So as we were saying, though, in my day, you would never have a boy become homecoming queen. It's absolutely unheard of. It wasn't even something that would be, something that would be brought up. But now you actually literally have a boy who thinks is a girl become homecoming queen, which took that title away from an actual girl. Oh yeah,
there was that.
You sound better than I do. They say you sound fine, but I have to figure it out. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
There was that guy that won one of the Miss Country pageants. Did you hear that one too?
Not specifically, but refresh my memory.
Yeah, so recently, actually, they have the whole, like, Miss Columbia, Miss Germany, all those
right.
ones, and they gave it to a trans person for one of those, too.
Well, I knew that they did for one of the big beauty pageants. That one I did remember. Hey, welcome, you tell him, Steve. He's probably listening at work, but I'm going to invite him anyways.
Yeah.
But, that's similar things, right? I mean, before you would never have a man compete in a female beauty pageant for the same reason why you wouldn't have a female compete in a male beauty pageant, or you wouldn't have an adult compete in a teen beauty pageant, which I still think is kind of weird. But the fact remains is that my argument was that it's cheating because in sports, obviously, they have a huge advantage being male. But as far as homecoming queen, this is something that girls have looked forward to growing up, right? They all kind of want to be the homecoming queen.
But isn't that all just a social construct, Steve?
It is a social construct as far as homecoming queen, but there's nothing wrong with having social constructs. I've had that argument before. What is wrong with having certain social constructs? We all tend to have social constructs when it comes to femininity and masculinity. We do kind of arbitrarily assign blue for boys, pink for girls. There's no objective fact of the matter. But typically, girls tend to like pink and boys tend to like blue. Just like boys tend to like more rougher sports and women tend to less rougher sports. These are things that we just notice as a society. And so I think that these constructs are the result of observations we have made because of societal norms. That's all. I mean, they're not prescriptive, right? We never prescriptively said blue, has to be for boys or pink has to be for girls. This is something that society has noticed, I think, naturally.
Well, so you know what? I would be probably a little stronger than that because I actually do think a lot of it, it does actually, some of it derive from biology. So like if you just allow men and women to do the things that they want to do, they will more naturally fold into these types of stereotypes.
Exactly.
So it's not purely social construct. So
well, I mean, but that still is a social construct that comes from natural norms. I mean, just because there's some kind of natural phenomenon that we're seeing where, even biologically, men tend to be the more aggressive, women tend to be the more passive, nurturing. Those are from biological norms, but they still can't be construed as culturally constructive models, right? I mean, so
yeah, I feel like you have to say it today, though. You have to say it today because it's not as obvious as it used to be anymore. You know what I mean? Like, and back in the day, everyone would have agreed to that. But today, no. Many people actually, they believe that humans are blank slates and that it's all social construct. There is no biology of the fact at all.
I agree that they do that. I think it's absolutely inconceivable to me that actually is an argument. Because clearly there's biological components. It is not blank. We're not tabula rasa. We have genetic factors that contribute to our mental states. Even though I am a non-reductive physicalist when it comes to mind-body problem, I do think that, of course, the mind is contingent upon the physical substrate. It's not mapped one-to-one. It's not a perfect correspondence, because I don't think you can reduce mental states purely to physical states. But there's a component there. There's absolutely a component there. And so they also seem to think that these consciousnesses are somehow gendered. You're a male consciousness, you're a female consciousness. That would imply that there's maybe some kind of substance dualism going on, which I don't accept. I accept property dualism. But I don't think there's an argument to be had that your mind is necessarily male or female gendered. You just have proclivities and things that you tend to and beliefs. But everything about the individual is strictly male. Even if I was to have, some kind of like ovi-testes, or even if I had a uterus or whatever, it would still be a male uterus. I mean, it would still be some kind of anatomical structure that genetically is male, even though it's typically a female anatomic feature, right? Because if I grew breast, would they be female breasts? But no, they'd be men with breasts. It would and that happens, right? Gynecomastia.
Well, and so you know what? I watched this. There was one medical guy, scientist guy, who did a TED talk. I'd have to go back and look for it and stuff. But basically, and this was actually like 10 years ago, so this wasn't as big of a hot topic issue. But his talk was on the idea that every cell of your body is male or female. The reason he was bringing this up was because he was talking about medical solutions, and his primary point was, he's like, look, you don't understand that, look, when you go to the doctor, the fact that you're a man or a woman determines what kind of medicine we should treat you with, because females are inherently predisposed to certain illnesses that men are not, and men are likewise predisposed to certain other illnesses that females are not. And to give one example that he used was, he's like, you don't understand, like, men and women have different skin. Like, just the outside skin of your body is uniquely different based on your gender.
They also have more of a thicker fat layer, too.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
No, exactly. And so just all
I
of
agree.
those factors play huge roles. I mean, like, especially when you're talking about these sports, right? And combat sports, the thickness of your skin, the thickness of your skull, your ability to take trauma is significantly different.
No, I absolutely agree with that, and I do agree that every cell in your body is genetically either male or female. They've differentiated early on to be either male or female, and I think that this notion that we're born, all born female, or to me, we're all conceived female, then is differentiated is wrong. I think we're undifferentiated, and then at a certain time, usually within a few weeks, things start to differentiating. Like the Muller ducts. The ridges and other things that happen to become the Van difference and the fallopian tubes and the ovaries. All these things start to differentiate later on, but prior to differentiation, our cell has already been predisposed to be male or female because it already is male or female. The zygote is going to be male or female, and it's going to develop along those lines, preset. There's no randomness there, right? If it was like some kind of magical gendered thing that just 50-50, then once the zygote is produced, it has the potential to become a female or a male, but that doesn't happen. That doesn't work that way. It literally is going to be predetermined that zygote is going to develop and gestate into a physical boy or physical girl or infant or embryo, I guess you could say. But yeah, down to a genetic level that we are male or female, and this is where I'm saying that they want to blur those lines in order to somehow be more inclusive. But by being more inclusive, you have no clear boundaries of anything anymore. You have no clear conditions of what is a male, what is a female. And as you said, women need different medical attention than males do. That's a fact of biology. It's a fact of reality. So why would you want to homogenize to the point where you no longer have these distinct boundaries of what is a male and what is a female? It makes absolutely no sense to me.
Yeah, it's completely ludicrous to me, and it blows my mind that this is a discussion and has been taken on such a global scale. Period. Like the fact that people are talking about it all over the world is like, oh no, like trans athletes should be able to perform in women's sports, and all these notions. I mean, I just think is ridiculous. I don't know. It's like the whole world has gotten mentally sick or something.
Well, they say a lot of it is a social virus, and I think there's some truism to that. But I think what happens is that the problem, especially on social media, is that a lot of these people just want to shut down dialogue. That's their whole goal, to shut down the dialogue. They don't want spaces like
Absolutely.
this exist. They don't want people like me talking about these things. They don't want anybody talking about it unless you agree with them. And if you don't agree with them, their entire ideology is such that you are a transphobe and we must shut you down. That's what their belief is. And that is the antithesis of free speech. That's the antithesis of everything that I stand for. And I always have, open panels where people can come in and they think I'm wrong. By all means, stand your ground and tell me. But you know how many people actually take me up on that? So very infrequently. As a matter of fact, I had I have on Facebook, other things that I talk about, like my logical arguments against the lack of belief atheism, right? And I tell people, look,
Right.
if you want to discuss my paper and my work, let's do it. I'm looking for this. I'm actively looking for this. Dr. Braxton Hunter would love to find somebody to go on Trinity Radio with me to talk about my paper. He's actively looking for somebody. No one ever wants to. And all they ever say is either you're wrong or they just don't understand my paper, in which case I'm like, well, you don't understand my paper. And they're like, oh, yes, I do. I'm like, okay, demonstrate to me that you do. And they never can. And so this is what I'm saying, because there's an objective fact of the matter, like with my paper, that is logical, and there's an objective fact of the matter to be had here as well. And this is why I think a lot of people don't want it to have these types of discussions or don't want them to happen, because they're standing on an ideology that is fundamentally flawed, and they cannot rationally justify it to other people. Maybe to themselves, but other people generally are not going to get on board and say, oh, you know what, a man can get pregnant. No, that is just not how it works in biology.
Well, and you know what else is just blowing my mind is it's how many women have actually they buy into this. Like I have met a few women who have they're just like, oh yeah, I could be as strong as a man. Like if a woman trained hard enough, she could beat Mike Tyson in his prime. If a woman did all these things, and I just find these to be some of the most ridiculous notions ever.
It almost is impossible. I would say, like I said, it's not completely 100% impossible, but to the point of absurdity. And because, I mean, can you imagine that one rare woman that could beat Mike Tyson? Hell, there might have been a man that existed that could have beat Mike Tyson, but you might not ever know who it was. But, well, I mean, he did get beat 2 times, I guess. The last two last 2 fights he had, he lost, but that was well past his prime, you know?
Yeah, it was well past his prime. But you know what, though, Steve? You know, I don't think there is or ever was a woman that could beat Mike Tyson.
Probably not.
I'm serious.
No, probably not.
I mean,
no,
because
I think you're right.
Because you could talk about it this way, right? Is there a woman ever that could have beaten Usain Bolt in a sprint?
People say I'm on a laptop mic. Maybe it's something. See, I wonder if it's not taking my right mic input. Let me see something while you're talking, because something's not right here.
All right. But yeah, it's just the notion that when you look at the top male competitors, like the top female competitors, they're not even close. Like when they've talked about what was it? I think it was like in the swimming. I think Leah Thomas or one of them, I forget. But yeah, like the swimming and many other sports and stuff like that, like they're really, really not comparable. I'll give you a really interesting one that kind of blew my mind, Steve, was baseball pitches. Last I checked, do you know what the Guinness Book World Record for fastest female pitch is?
100 some odd miles an hour. By the way, I just changed my mic setting. Let me know if that sounds better.
Okay.
I like I said, I lost all my settings for my OBS. I got to rebuild everything from scratch, so it's going to take some time. And so I don't think I had my mic setting right. So on the outside, do I sound clearer now than I did before? Let me know.
You sound the same to me.
Well, I just changed it on my OBS, so it wouldn't sound different to you, but it might sound different to my outside, the people listening on my YouTube channel. So if you're on the outside, let me know if that makes a difference. It should, because I don't think I had it on the right setting before, but I'm not positive. But let me know. But okay, so what's the fastest? I'm not going to Google it right now. I trust you.
69 miles an hour.
What is it?
69 miles an hour.
Not even 100 miles an hour when the fastest fast ball is what, 130, 40? Oh, way better audio. Okay.
No, it's 105. Like 105 is like top male speed.
Okay. It's still over 100. Okay, they sound
Yeah. Well, I mean, but yeah, when you're talking about like in baseball, you're talking about like the 1 or 2 extra miles an hour, that's what's considered really, really fast. Is like, yeah, just the pitcher pitching 105 versus 104 is a whole lot faster.
Yeah. No,
but the notion
I think that's
is
totally
like
that's the case. I can't imagine a woman, because again they're just built physically different. But even if they could, I believe you. But let's say hypothetically, and thank you for the outside for letting me know my mic is better, because I would have known. Because I got to set all this stuff up. But let's assume that there could be. But so what? Those are called outliers. You're not. I mean, even if you don't have the best of the best. I mean, look at Merriweather. Look at Holyfield. Look at Foreman. Again, these are all masters of their craft. These are the best boxers that have ever lived. Muhammad Ali, I still think he's probably the all-time greatest. No matter what people say, that dude was just beyond amazing. But for his weight class, right? But Muhammad Ali, did he fight in the heavyweight?
Yeah, he was a heavyweight,
but not super heavyweight.
Not super, just regular heavyweight.
Did George Foreman fight in the super heavyweight?
That's a good question.
He's a big dude.
He might have fought super heavyweight later on, especially.
Yeah, but either still, if you had, it's so funny. I just did a post on a posing on distribution, and this goes to that. It goes to kind of like what is our expectation? If you had a distribution of men and women, and you just randomly sampled like 10 males that box and 10 female that box, does anybody really think that the 10 males are not going to be able to beat the 10 females? Does anybody really believe that? No, of course not.
Yeah. Well, you know what? There was a comedian who had a radio talk show or something like that, right? And he was getting made fun of because he was skinny, right? So a bunch of women, they were all on social media, ranting and railing. And he said, okay, fine. He's like, look, I will take anyone, and give them free tickets to my show if they can beat me in a boxing match. And so he had 10 women sign up to beat him in a boxing match. And I mean, no weight classes, right? So some of them were big women and everything. And of course, he just smoked all of them.
Oh, I bet.
He was a shorter guy, and fairly thin, but yeah, like there was no comparison. There was no comparison at all.
Oh, I can imagine. And by the way, real quick, Do you know how to change your mic on the Twitter Spaces? Because what I think it's doing, I think it's going through my webcam mic. That might be why it's a little bit hollow when I listen to the Twitter Space. And so
that's a really good question. I don't know. I don't know, because Twitter Spaces to me don't have as sophisticated settings. So it might have like only a standard. I'm not sure.
No joke. But I'm sure there's got to be a way to actually change the mic input on Spaces, because I think that's what's happening. That's why it sounds much different to my live chat on YouTube right now.
So you're doing it on your computer, right?
Yeah, but I have an audio system. I have a Focusrite audio system.
Yeah. But see, Twitter only recently added PCs to be able to do Twitter Spaces. Like, you actually could not do it in the past. You couldn't do a mic in the past.
I know.
So I don't know. I'm just saying, like, it's not likely they're too sophisticated.
Does anybody know how to change your mic input on Twitter Spaces? If you do, let me know, because I think that's the problem. Because you should be hearing me much clearer than you probably are. I know it's intelligible, but it should be better. It should be better. But anyways, back to your topic. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. I definitely agree that, on average, you're going to have these biological differences. So that's why Title IX in sports was created in the first place. So why is it that they want so much integration? What's the goal to be integrated? What it is they want to validate this belief that trans women are women, which is, I'm sorry, a fundamentally flawed biological, error. It's an error in ontology. And once you start with a foundational error, things that flow from it are going to be confusing. They're going to be wrong as far as how to go about having a successful society. And I think there's solutions to these things, but unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to take the steps necessary to make these solutions happen, because they're going to be labeled transphobic, and they're going to get criticized for it. They're going to get canceled for it, and we've seen that happen in the past. Until people speak up, like myself, who doesn't care about being canceled. I've been canceled a dozen times, big freaking deal. Who want to state their opinions and discuss them rationally, which I think now more than ever people are starting to do without fear. I've seen that. I think people are less fearful now than they've ever been. I think that these types of things are going to continue to happen. But I do think that them being called out more has reduced them. And I just read that I think Scotland is no longer identifying males that have committed crimes as trans women, and not prosecuting them as females. They're being prosecuted as their biological self, which means that we are still able to determine male versus female. If a transgender woman commits a crime, and you want to put it under statistics as a female that commits that crime, why would you want to do that? Especially if you're a woman. Why would you want men who are statistically more likely to commit crimes, especially violent crimes, to now be statistics under females? Because that makes it skewed, and that makes it more harmful for women in general. So I don't know why anybody would want to even do that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, so you know what? I think that it's the notion that in reality, the people that are pushing all this stuff, it harms women more than anyone else, hands down. I just think it's like, as far as a demographic, like all of this transphobe stuff or whatever, it harms women. It puts them in danger. It puts them in unfavorable situations, and it really does not do them any services at all. And again, just going back to just the fundamental basics of human biology and reality. I mean, we used to be taught in school that there were, a gender binary and stuff like that, that there were different sexes. But today they are teaching in schools different stuff. And it is, I think it's very terrifying that so many people can buy into it, and that, in some cases they are looking to push it in laws. Well, and I don't know if you've ever heard, they're already looking to try and change the whole Spanish language, right? They want to add the Latin X thing as opposed to the Latina. Oh, you haven't heard that? Yeah. No. So you say like Latina and Latino. Well, instead they say it's like, no. Those are gender binaries. You shouldn't use those because they're obviously horrible. Instead, seriously? No. Seriously. They want to go Latinx. You're a Latinx, which is gender neutral. Or doesn't really specify.
I do vaguely now recall something like that. That's absolutely asinine. Like literally, that's
Yeah.
just stupid.
Well, and many other languages are gendered as well. I
Oh
heard
yeah, no,
French is as
yeah,
well,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah. Of
other
course.
languages.
Oh yeah, Latin dialects are definitely gendered. This is why you have things like the masculine sense and the female sense of words, right? Um,
Yeah, exactly.
and that's just language. But they're trying to prescriptively change language in order to fit to a ideology, and that's not how language works. Language doesn't change by ideologies. Language changes by usage, and those usages are never going to catch on. It's just not going to happen because there's just not enough people that
But
want
that's what
something
they're
like that.
doing. But
That's
that's
what
what
they're
they're
trying to
doing,
do.
Steve.
That's
That's
what
what
they're
they're trying
trying
to
to
do.
do.
They think, and if enough people use the same language, by the way, it's Latinx. Like they, instead of adding like Latino, Latina, it's Latinx. They're just taking an
Latinx.
entire syllable out of it. Um,
Wow.
so but that's what they do. They need to make the language snappy. They need to make that. This is why they're targeting the younger crowd as opposed to the older crowd that won't have any other crap.
Yeah, and I think that's also a really, really important point. Is that is exactly why they're targeting the younger crowd. They want to appeal to children because they don't know any better, right? They're not that interested in convincing you, Steve.
Right.
They're gonna do you by force. They're gonna convince only the ones who don't know that much better. They'll convince them through education or re-education.
Oh, I think you're exactly right. It is by re-education for the adults, and if they don't comply, they get canceled and they get branded transphobic or something like that. And then the indoctrination starts with the youth. And so when people say, the trans people are going after kids, they're not saying that trans people want kids to somehow be sexualized. I'm not even suggesting that, because that's what something that was used against the gays in 80s and 90s, and of course that's just bullshit. Gays are more likely to commit sexual crimes than straight people. Matter of fact, I much rather trust many gay friends that I have over many straight people. So that's just not an argument. But when I say that trans people want to indoctrinate kids, it is because of the ideology they want to get them into. And I don't necessarily think that is specifically for grooming purposes, although that does happen. So let me make it very clear. I think a lot of it, and this is, again, my personal opinion, in a struggle session, I'm going to defend my beliefs. My personal opinion is that I think it is just to validate trans people's being trans. They want validation so much that their belief that a trans woman is a woman or a trans man is a man, that they want children to be indoctrinated, so they affirm that. And when they grow up, they affirm that because they need that affirmation. I mean, I know it may sound rather conspiratorial in some ways, but I don't think that it is. I think that it actually makes sense. That is the reason why most of them want children indoctrinated, because they want to be validated. Again,
That's it.
I'm up for criticism on that.
You think that that's the only reason?
No,
I think that's
not
one
the
of the main
only reason.
reasons.
Not the only reason. No, of course not. But is a reason. I don't even know if it's even the primary reason. If you tell them, Steve, Dave want to argue it's the primary reason, I'll listen. But it's definitely a reason.
Well, so that is definitely a reason. I think it's a big reason because a lot of these people, when they realize what's going to happen to their genitals, they realize, oh, I'm not actually going to have any kids. So there's one of two ways that the trans ideology survives. One, adoption, which I have no qualms against. If there's a trans couple out there that want to adopt and they're going to be good parents, fine. But the second thing is, well, we can do more with the ones that are already here.
That's a good point, though, because transgender generally don't procreate, and so they have to do it via adoption, or some kind of other method. And
they can't.
Yeah,
they can't procreate because once you start taking the hormone medications, a lot of people want to be like, oh, well, the hormone medication doesn't stop us from doing it. No. It ultimately halts a lot of the processes once you get too far into the hormone replacement therapy. If you're a man that takes too much estrogen or a woman that takes too much testosterone, guess what? That's slowly killing your cells that are intended for that very purpose.
Yeah, I think that I'm not saying that they can't procreate, but the odds are going to be obviously way less.
Yeah, the odds are.
You'd have to have a trans person with another trans person, one identifying female that now is from a male, and vice versa. And they do have trans couple that get pregnant. That does happen, but it's so rare, right? So I mean, you have something like Megan Fox has 3 kids. people like, oh, they're not trans. Okay, fine, whatever. They're trans or not trans. But the point is that she has raised them as being gender fluid and gender neutral or whatever. And that is part of the ideology, right? That is, it's still indoctrinating them to think that, okay, as a boy, I'm going to wear a dress to school, which, again, personal freedoms. I don't care. I really don't. It's a personal freedom, and this is where I diverge from, TERFs out there that, even because I'm not a feminist, so I can't be a TERF, but a lot of the TERFs be like, oh, a boy can't even wear a dress. I don't care less. Express yourself. But there are going to be societal things that is pushback on that, right? But wearing a dress and then claiming yourself wanting to be homecoming queen, big difference. That's not expression. That's taking the rightful spot of a biological girl, which I find to be detestable.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, I would say I think that it's way more about power than it is like some sort of righteous indignation for just the trans movement or wanting to see things fair for trans people or something like that. That's why it's so much more widespread, because the trans population is extremely small. And those who are passing the laws, those who are in power, those who are pushing these notions are not trans themselves, right? There's a very, very, very small minority of people who are trans who are actually passing laws, who are actually moving these things forward. So it has to be much more about power and the controlling of things through this movement.
All right, that's a good question. Let me ask you that, because I think most people would agree with you that trans is not a huge part of the population. I mean, we're going to say let's argue Wendell. Let's put it at 1%. Okay. But those are the people not in power. Very few of them. I mean, granted, you have like the trans woman that's in charge of what is it, the Human Health and Services or whatever, Admiral, whatever her name is. I don't even care. But it's very, very rare that you have a trans person in a high position of power that's able to change the way the state or the federal level does something. Very, 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 very few exist. So who's actually doing it? Who's actually legislating this type of stuff? It has to be non-trans people that are doing it. And most of them seem to be women for some reason, which I cannot wrap my head around.
I mean, I do the political stuff, Steve. And
do you? Yeah, I know.
I hate to say it, but it's mainly one side of the political spectrum arguing. I'm not going to say specifics, but you know that thing where I'm pointing at the bridge of my nose and I'm pointing at you, like you know what I'm talking about. It's that side. It's that side.
Gotcha. So I'm asking the live chat. April asked, "You find the ideology that trans people should be accepted to be a bad thing? I don't know what they mean by accepted." And I'm gonna be a little pedantic here. I'm gonna be a little bit pettifogging only because what does it mean to accept? I have friends that are trans that I accept that they're good people. Right? They're my friends. I don't give a crap that they want to be trans or transsexual. That's their life. It doesn't bother me.
That's a really important distinction, because they always talk about acceptance, but they don't really want to define what acceptance means.
I can easily define it for both of you right now. So the acceptance, to put it in a term, in a mathematics term. I know Steve loves his mathematics. So typical acceptance is X. You can consider just everyday acceptance as X, right? What a lot of the people, especially activists, want is X plus 1. They want a little bit more on top of that because they are so little in the population that they are special.
Okay, but what's the baseline? What's the baseline for acceptance? Because again, I understand they want something more than acceptance.
Are saying like, I want you to be yourself. I'm respecting you as a human being. Just generalize acceptance.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Their acceptance would be, well, you also have to do this, that, and the other in order to make me feel accepted. That's not enough. I want you to do this, that, and the other on top of it.
But see, that's not what they're teaching in schools. April says that's what we're teaching in schools. That's not what they're teaching in schools. If teaching in school would be like, look, this person identifies as female, okay, accept them. If you want to be friends with them, accept them. That. If you don't want to be friends with them, you have no onus to accept them or anybody for what they say. It's not prescribed. If I don't like somebody, I don't have to accept anything about them. Do I have to? I'm not trying to compare it to, like white supremacy. Okay, but I mean, do I have to accept a white supremacist for his ideology? No, I don't. I don't have to. Right? I don't have to accept a trans person who believes they're actually female. right? I think acceptance would be like, if you want to wear a dress, and you shouldn't be made fun of. Although, of course, kids are going to be cruel, and that's just a fact of life. You can't police kids. It's very difficult to do. But as adults, if a man wants to wear a dress, I don't particularly care. Knock yourself out, right? And I know that other people will push back on that, like, Mary Kate Delvey. She would push back on that because I asked her about that. And I would love to get her in space one day, but whatever.
Here's something that I think is important to also notice, is that it's not only about acceptance. And I think one of my other friends pointed this out, is like, they don't want you just to accept it. They want you to celebrate it. They've gone past the part of simply acceptance. Mm-hmm. And now you have to celebrate it. So, you know what? If you're not celebrating, if you're not excited that, hey, that trans woman, won the prom queen, then that's not good. You have to actually be excited. You have to celebrate it. You have to be willing to join in their traditions and their new culture that they're creating. They don't simply want you to go like, hey, I'm okay with that. No, you need to be a part of it.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think you're right that they want more than just agreeing with it. But it's still, I don't even agree with it. So how can I celebrate it? And so am I not accepting?
That's where they don't have tolerance.
Exactly. I'm accepting the boy wants to cross-dress to be a female, and he can believe whatever he wants. I'm okay. That's him. Okay, I don't care. I really don't. But when he crosses the line and takes the place of a female for homecoming queen, that's been always a female position, because you have a homecoming queen, homecoming king. This is how it's always been. I'm not trying to appeal to tradition. I know it sounds like it, but you have two divisions for a reason, because there's the male sex and the female sex. That's why there's two divisions.
Well, and see, not only that, right? It is the notion that they don't accept the idea. They won't accept you if you don't agree with them. Because, you could talk about acceptance. Acceptance would be like, hey, I'm not going to hate on you, but I disagree with you. And basically they want to push it and say like, no, you can't disagree with us even.
Well, that's what happens.
Because
go ahead.
Yeah. No, it's just exactly that. So like, when they have these events, right? Some boy does this and that. If you're not there actively celebrating and you're like, well, I don't agree with that, then like, that's it. They want to cancel you, right?
Yeah, 100%. And that's exactly what happened with Jennifer Johnson when she had her, quote, struggle session. And she was talking to whoever it was. I don't even remember their name, and I don't care. But basically they were saying to Jennifer, she's a Canadian politician. She's part of the United Conservative Party. So you tell him, Steve would probably know way more about this person than I do, because I don't know much about politics.
Here and there, I hear stories.
But anyways, long story short, she basically said something along the lines of that she compared transgender kids to turds and cookies. Don't know the whole details behind it, but irrelevant. The fact is that she went on this struggle session to talk to a trans person, and the trans person lie was basically, are you willing to accept that I am a woman, that as a trans woman I am actually a woman? And Jennifer Johnson was like, no, I'm not willing to do that. And so the trans person like, well, we can't have a discussion on it. And then that's where it kind of ended, and so that was not facilitating any kind of actual dialogue. It was I believe, or we're not going to have a conversation on it. But it made no sense, because this person, and again, I don't remember their name, who Jennifer Johnson was talking to, but this I didn't say he was a guy. He was definitely, he's a transgender, but I'm not going to have any respect for somebody like that, because they're forcing somebody to accept that they're a woman when they're not. He automatically wanted Jennifer to assume or even state that he was a female before they even had the discussion. So why bother even having a discussion? It's either believe me, believe as I do, or we're not even going to have the dialogue to even try to convince you.
So, Steve, I'm so curious. I've got to hear what you think about this, because others have compared this, and I will say I agree with this notion, and that it is the trans ideology. It's the fundamentalism of 60 years ago, right? Where it's just cramming religion. Back in the old days, it was the idea is like, well, you just have to believe or else, and then we'll ostracize you, we'll kick you out, we will do all of these things if you don't believe as we do. And that's exactly what's going on with this new movement, where it's like, they're not really interested in talking. This is how it is, and you have the choice to either believe us and join us, or, be ostracized, kicked out, all of that.
There is religiosity to it. I do think there's a religiosity component to it. As a matter of fact, I just started admitting for a group on Facebook called the Epistemology of Religion. And I had noted this very thing about definitions, and one of which was religion. And I suggested that we have some normative uses of terms. And religion was a very specific term that I thought we should be using only when it actually fits, when there's some kind of ideological background that people are doing in order to promote their personal beliefs, right? Whether performative, whether it be rituals, or something about them that is the promotion of a particular belief. And even though transgender doesn't have any spiritual component to it, and so I don't consider it a religion, but there is a religiosity.
Well, see, you know what? That's
it.
Questionable. I would question you on the notion of it doesn't have a spiritual component to some degree.
Okay, I can listen.
So let me give you like one example as to potentially why. And I mean, hey, look, not going into all of the other ontological distinctions that you were talking about earlier, but let's just say hypothetically, right? Because part of their proposition is this, right? Their proposition is, I am a woman in a man's body, right?
Mm-hmm.
How is that possible since they're erasing all of the biological factors? Isn't it only possible for that to be the case if there is an additional spiritual element to it? In other words, like, are you saying that you're spiritually a woman in a man's body?
Yes and no. I mean, the problem, as I mentioned earlier, like I said, it does really reek of substance dualism. I mean, I don't know what they mean by engendered as far as like their consciousness.
Exactly. Exactly.
But you got to remember that these transgender ideologists, they're not really educated in philosophy in that regard, right? I don't think a lot of them really dive into
100%.
philosophy of mind, right? Yeah, I mean, so you agree with me that, I look into philosophy of mind a little bit, right? But it's definitely one of the harder aspects of philosophy. But I'm not, I don't consider myself ignorant, I guess, when it comes to basics of philosophy of mind. But they don't even get into that, right? They're not going to know who Chalmers is. They're not going to know who, they're not going to know what the mind-body problem even is, right? They're not going to know non-reductive physicalism. And so I wouldn't expect them to be able to articulate their arguments on that level, although it would be nice. It would be nice. But I think you're exactly right. That seems to be what they're implying, even if they don't have the vocabulary to really formulate their arguments in a coherent manner. But they are kind of implying that their consciousness has some kind of gendered notion to it.
Yeah, they're tacitly proposing it without really saying it. And I mean, I joke about that a little bit because I do know some of them who are atheists and proposing these notions. And I'm just like, okay, look, without a soul, a spirit, or anything like that, if it is just the brain and stuff like that, what is it you're saying? Like, I don't really understand. What is it you're saying? Like, because you can even look, like, there is a difference between male and female brains, right? And so it's like, okay, so like, look, if you're saying that your mind, your whatever it is, your mind is different than your body, what else could you be proposing? I'm not sure what else you could even be saying then.
Right.
If you don't believe.
If every cell in your body is male, though, how do you get a female consciousness? It makes no sense.
Exactly.
I mean, if the mind subsumes on the physical, which I do believe, I believe that is what's called supervenience, that the mind supervenes upon the physical, then how do you get a female consciousness from a male substrate? It just makes no sense. The mind is whatever gender you are, your identity. Now, you could believe something, like I believe I'm a cat, right? That doesn't give me a cat gender, or I hate to use the word gender there, but that doesn't make me a cat, right? I could believe that I'm a cat all I want, but my consciousness is not that of a cat, just like, Nagel had wrote what it's like to be a bat, right? He talks about this property of the consciousness that is batism, that only a bat knows what it's like to be a bat. Just like I only know what it's like to be a male human because I am male. But I could think myself as a bat, I could think myself as a cat, I could even think myself as a female, but the reality is I'm still a female, still a male, just has this false belief. And I think that they wanted society to capitulate and cater to people that have false beliefs, rather than either one, get them help and resolve that discontinuity, that gender dysphoria, or at least live their life such that they can go through it and not have that discomfort. And either way, I'm okay with. But I've actually asked trans people, if you could take a pill, and let's say you're a male, and you think you're trans, if you could take a pill and just strictly be male and no longer think you're female, would you take it? I think every time they've said no, which means that they they rather have that discomfort and believe they're female than alleviate this discomfort and have a congruence between their mind and their body. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm not trying to judge them for it. I'm just saying that most of them will not take that pill.
Yeah. Well, hey, Steve. Hey, man, I got to run. It's been great hanging out.
Bro.
And look forward to the next opportunity. So I think you're going to have to roll on with Dave. Huh?
Yeah, every Saturday, promote these struggle sessions. I have them every Saturday. I think I'm going to try because I know I'm off Saturday. And usually I'll do them between 6 to 7, 8 o'clock at night on Pacific time. But, yeah, I want to make that a kind of a mainstay. I do have other people that I know want to join, but unfortunately tonight they were kind of busy. I know Steven's still working, but he might be able to jump on. But other people want to talk, by all means. Here's your chance. Thank you, Squirrel. I appreciate your questions and your addition to the dialogue. That's great. Seriously.
Yeah, man. We'll catch up. We'll catch up down the road later.
Sounds good. So I'm going to still trying to figure out how to change my voice settings on Twitter because I just can't figure it out. I mean, does it still sound a little hollow to you guys? I know Stacy's busy, so they can't come in. They sent something on Twitter, but Steve, you still there?
Yeah, I'm just talking between, man.
How do I sound like I'm in a tunnel on the Twitter?
On the YouTube you did. On Twitter, not so much.
Really? Because I fixed it now, so it should be better. But
Yeah,
I'm still wondering. Here, you know what? Let me cover up my other mic. Wait, I want to make sure what mic I'm on. Am I using this mic? I'm going to tap on my mic I'm using. Tap, 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 tap. And then tap on the other mic that I'm not using. Which one did it tap on? What a low way of determining what mic I'm using. Tap, tap, tap. Is it this mic here, the one I'm using? Type. Can you hear that, Steve? I know the outside knows it's.
I can hear you just fine on the X situation.
What's that?
I can hear you just fine on the X situation. But
All right, so this right here, you can hear scratching.
I did. Yeah.
Okay, but it's not this. I'm tapping my other mic. It's not.
No, now you're tapping it. Yep.
Oh, okay. So that's what it is. It's going through my other mic. That's why it's so bad. Because I bet you money it's using. It's using my camera mic, isn't it? This one.
Yeah. That now you're tapping that.
Shit.
Yep. Heard all that. See, you just dropped it. You just threw me across the room.
Well, no, I put it back on my monitor because it's my cam mic that it's using. The outside, I'm using my Focusrite. So I need to figure out how to change mic on Twitter. So how am I going to do that? I mean, it's got to be an easier way. I mean, I could just unplug my webcam, I guess, and maybe at least
As
default.
far as I've been hosting Twitter Spaces, I don't think there is a way to change it. All the time, I have to be sure that if I'm going to have my microphone, I need to be sure that it is plugged in and active before I start the space.
Yeah, what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to unplug my webcam because the outside here's it just fine because I'm going through my studio system to do it. But the Twitter space I know is not right. It is using my webcam mic when it shouldn't be. So to the people listening like you, it's not going to sound quite right. So I can fix that next time though. At least each time I'm getting a little bit more knowledgeable about these spaces. So.
Yeah, and it's trial and error, which is the scientific method to a T.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that next Twitter space, I'm just gonna have to unplug my webcam so it defaults to my actual mic because I listened to it last time and it just sounded so low grade and I was wondering why it sounded so bad, and then I realized I bet you it's using the wrong mic. I bet you it is, and sure enough, that's exactly what's going on. I mean, I could bring my mic close, like for right now. Hang on a sec.
Yeah.
Here we go. Now I have it like right next to me, so it should be clearer. Is that better for you in the Twitter space?
Clear, and your gain is way too high.
Well, I mean, I can't adjust the gain on a web mic. I can pull it back a little bit. How's this? Testing 1 2 3.
I can hear you loud and clear, man.
Okay. Yeah, because I put the webcam literally sitting on my chest.
Yeah. I can hear you loud. Maybe not as clear, but.
All right. Well, I'd rather have clear than loud. I can just move it back a little bit even more. So, how's that? Just for right now. I mean, like I said, I'm going to disable this thing next time, but I still got some questions, I guess, from the live chat. By the way, hi Chemo. Hey Chemo. So did you like the video that I did on the Frey Geach embedding problem? It was I didn't do a video on it. Blog. Sorry, I was going to do a video on it, but I think my blog explained it pretty well. And I don't know if I really want to do a video on it because it's just I don't know. But I mean, I did it for Chemo Maki. Did it make sense to you, Chemo? He's on the live chat right now, on my YouTube channel. And then they asked, yeah, like Piers Morgan. TOD said Piers Morgan claims he identifies as a black lesbian in debates like this. Well, yeah, and I think it's a valid counter argument. I really do. I don't think it's sophistry. I think that if somebody says, look, I identify as a lesbian black woman, what's to stop me if I identify as that? I mean, sure, you can argue, well, he's doing it just to make a point. Okay, but that's fine, but it does show the issue. If Piers Morgan really did actually believe he was a lesbian black woman, he would be a lesbian blac woman according to their ideology.
Right,
because that's what his mind. Yeah, according to his mind, he believes he's black, he's a lesbian, he believes he's a female. It's all about belief at that point. So the issue is that is a sound counter example and defeater of why we shouldn't base our uses of terms merely on beliefs, because that's all it is. It is a belief. It is 100% a belief. And yet I cannot find a single person willing to come on and argue otherwise. They'll call you every name in the book, but they will not have a articulate, intelligent, cogent response to how is this not society being remolded and reformulated into, oh, we're going to make these words what we want them to be, and that's going to be based solely on individual beliefs. That is not how you have a constructive or cohesive society at all. That's antithetical.
We got away from that when we got rid of the crown in America. That's when we told King George III go away. We got away from that.
Yeah, I agree. And this actually goes into why I think people have the freedoms to believe what they want, and people should have the freedom to wear what they want. And if they want to live their life as the opposite sex, there's a lot of people that do that. Look, Buck Angel does that. He's a transsexual that realizes that he's a she, right, biologically, but he wants to live his life as a female, and most people don't care. I certainly don't, and I respect him, so I call him a he, right, because he's done all the stuff necessary to look like a male. He passes very well as a male, and it's not some kind of sexual fetish, and he's seems like a decent person, so I respect him, and so I'm going to use his pronouns that he wants to use. Blair White, same thing. Blair White has never denied that she is a biological male. Jessica Gill has never denied that she's a biological male. But what they all have in common is that they have a very different approach to transsexual than they do from this modern transgenderism that's trying to convince people that they are the opposite sex. And that's where I think they jump the shark. And this is why I have a lot of trans friends that aren't trying to convince people of things that are just not congruent with reality. And they're absolutely against it, too. As a matter of fact, Brianna Wu, if you recognize that name from Gamergate, she's been getting involved in this lately because she believes that only a biological female can get pregnant. And she messaged me on Twitter the other day, something like this, or not message, but she tweeted something to me. And even though I really don't remember her involvement on Gamergate as much as I do with Anita Sarkeesian and Mercedes Carrera, who, by the way, I just sent another letter to. She's now my pen pal, I guess. I'm now pen pals with Mercedes Carrera, who's in prison. But, even Brianna Wu, who is a transgender person, says that, no, we should not be arguing that men can get pregnant. That's just silly. And there's going to be pushback from that, from actual women, because they're the ones that actually have to go through this. A biological woman is the only one that can go through pregnancy. Only one.
Yeah, outside of I think I'm on record saying anyone that wants to transition, like any man that wants to transition to a woman, I'm on record saying that women are the base. That is the standard that you have to shoot for, but you're never going to hit.
We mean, okay, go reframe that again.
So if you have a guy transitioning to a woman, then the closest thing that they can get to, they're never going to hit. They're never going to be that woman.
However, I got you. Okay.
That's as close as they're going to get.
Yeah, yeah. They can look. They can look like a woman. They can dress like a woman. They can even be treated as a woman for many types of social functions, but not in sports, not in school, not in those types of situations. But if you're, in your church and you're, a trans person and you have friends, of course they should treat you as a female if they respect you, right? And you're not some kind of AGP male that just clearly looks male, but they're not even trying to look female. And it's just some kind of sexual fetish, and that's a completely different story. But like when April asked, about acceptance, and I asked, what does somebody mean by acceptance? To me is, I accept trans people for living their life as a trans person, but they have to accept that society is not going to believe that they're actually the opposite sex. That's not going to happen. That is a fleeting thing that has been temporary, that some people were infected by, I guess, but that's going to change over time. That's going to go away. It's not sustainable.
Man, I miss tomboys. I miss tomboys and actual gentlemen. Like, there's I miss it when those were the terms. So oh yeah, she's kind of a just a tomboy. Oh, okay, we understand completely how this woman acts and how she is around the guys. Yeah.
Yeah,
now
no, my daughter was a kind of a tomboy, so yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Okay, so real quick, Timo says, I was very gratified to draw the conclusion that your Fred Geach thing on GDC pretty much lined up with my own understanding of the embedding thing. Good. So I wasn't too hosed on that.
No, you were pretty spot on, man.
Cool. I like to do my due diligence, and I like to understand something before I put it out, either on my blog or on my YouTube channel or on my Twitter.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, shitty when people attack me. And I honestly do try to do my due diligence. So if I'm wrong on something, all they got to do is just come by and tell me. All they got to is explain it to me. But most of them don't do it. If I made a mistake on my Fred Geach embedding problem, somebody in philosophy would have gone, "Hey, Steve, I think this is not quite right." But nobody did, and everybody said, "Yeah."
That's because they're not being afraid of they're not afraid of misgendering. They're not afraid of the opposite opinion. They're most afraid of being proven wrong.
You think so?
I think so. I'm pretty sure it's a big narcissism game.
Hi, Dan. Dan the Machine from YouTube has popped in. Hi, Dan. How you been, my friend?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, not too bad. Another struggle session where people can come in and tell me where I'm wrong, but I invited people that earlier that I didn't even know who they were, but I'm like, look, if you think I'm wrong, come on in. But they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, but don't tell me that you're talking about acceptance when you're not even willing to put your own views up for criticism. I am. And if you like me for it, you hate me for it, it doesn't matter. The fact is that I'm willing to go on record and put my views out there, and they could be changed as according with the evidence. Again, as I said, I'm the admin now for another group. I got so many different groups on Facebook, but one of them is the epistemology of religion, and it's about evidentialism, and that I think everybody in there kind of believes that the strength of your convictions should be directly proportional to the evidence given, and I think that's absolutely true. I think there's reasons for this. You cannot have a strong conviction for something that's just merely a guess, right? If I have no reasons to believe one way or the other, but I say, look, I'm convinced of this, that doesn't make sense, epistemologically speaking.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but I'm sorry, I'm just adjusting some things. Yeah, but first and foremost, I just wanted to give some, maybe try to do some IT help with the mic on Twitter.
Yeah. Real quick. 3 minutes. Yeah, let me do that in a sec after I answer Todd here. Supposedly there's a trans activist online that claims they have a uterus transplant and men can become pregnant. And here's the problem I have with that. These are all artificial things, right? And artificial transhumanism does not matter to me. These are accidentals. Biologically speaking, a man cannot naturally get pregnant, period. And even species, I argue that pregnancy only occurs in certain species, and mostly mammals. I said before that's only mammals, and I don't know if that's quite true. Like a shark is not a mammal, but sometimes they say a shark is pregnant, but other times they say that if it's not a mammal, it really can't be a pregnancy because it has to be a true pregnancy, which requires a uterus, a placenta, and some other anatomical features that only mammals have. But I'm willing to accept that it might be things like a shark, maybe, which is not a mammal, and sure but it's still that only the female of the species gets pregnant. 100% of the time. There is no instance of a male getting pregnant, even though they say, oh, seahorses get pregnant. Well, no. What a seahorse is that the female has this I think barb thing that they stick in the male seahorse and then injects her egg into him, and then it gets fertilized, and he but that's still not what we consider to be a true pregnancy. At least I don't. And again, we're not seahorses, and and so, to say that the male of the species can get pregnant, again, there might be these weird things like a seahorse, or it's called hermaphrodism, sequential hermaphrodism for like clownfish. But again, we're not those species. We're talking about humans, and in humans, only the female of the species can get pregnant. Period. And then April says, I think your arguments are primarily based on your feelings, yet I give evidence for it. I give reasonable, articulable, rational argumentation for my arguments. They're not just based on feelings. Clearly not. Because my feelings are, again, live your life how you want. I tend to liberalism when it comes to that, right? I don't care if people are gay. I don't care if people are straight. As long as you're a good person. Where do the feelings come in on that? And then let me see if you can fix this problem, Dan. So how do I fix this mic on my Twitter space?
That's what I find we have to test. If you go in the sound settings in Windows, easiest in the volume setting on the taskbar. If you right click, open sound settings.
Yeah, open sound settings. I got that. Okay.
And then there's advanced sound options. And by application, you can set which input you want to use.
You know what? I knew that too. I've done that a million times. All right, so I just did that. I just changed it to my system.
But it's fixed.
Did it change my sound?
Yep, absolutely. Sound a million times better.
Yeah, you can sound when I did it, right? You could tell that I actually went in there and I changed it. And I actually knew that too, but I wasn't thinking it was a Windows setting. I was thinking it was a Twitter setting.
But I don't think Twitter has those options.
I don't think so either. But now you can tell the huge difference between my webcam mic, which is just a piece of crap, condenser mic, and opposed to my actual, more expensive sound system.
Yeah, that's day and night.
Thank you, Dan. I do appreciate. And then see what else we got on the. And stick around. I'm trying to. Todd says if that ain't the pot killing the pot. Oh, he's talking about April. Yeah, Todd says that April actually is the one kind of bases her arguments on feelings, and I think Todd's right. I've never seen April actually formulate what I would consider to be a substantive rebuttal to my arguments on this. And I love the fact that April asks questions. They're great questions. But questions are not rebuttals. Here's, Skeptic77 on the live chat says, feelings don't care about your facts. And I happen to agree with that. Facts are facts. And if you cannot factually come to the conclusion that for the human species of Homo sapiens sapiens, there is the male of the species and the female of the species, I don't know what your argument actually is going to be then. I don't know where to go from there. And I swear to God, if one more person says, what about people that cannot bear children? What about people that don't produce large gametes or small gametes? It's such a dumb argument. That's not a counter argument. Those are just called accidental properties. That's all. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead. Steve? Ooh. Are you okay?
I'm sorry. Is my microphone on?
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
Sorry, I didn't realize. I did not realize. I'm sorry. Let me turn that off. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I accidentally turned it on when I got in here.
But do you agree that these counter arguments about, because again they're trying to enable some kind of prescriptivist view that only when I said like the female produces the large gamete, that's generally true, right? But it's not prescribed such that if you don't produce a large gamete, you're not a female. It just means that if you do produce the large gamete, functional, that you can only be a female. The male cannot produce a functional large gamete that can lead to reproductive success. And so we're not defining women and men strictly by the fact they're producing a functional gamete, but on the population level, that's what a woman and a male is. The individual, we're going to have to look at them for accidental properties, right? We're going to have to say, okay, genetically, what are they? And we can do that. Everybody that's ever existed could be genetically determined to be male or female, whether it be on the anatomic level or the genetic level. Every scientist that says, okay, here's a body, am I going to determine they're female or male? They can do it every single time. There's no case where they couldn't determine.
Yeah, I guess in a scientific speaking way, I would kind of agree, but that's really not the way we interact with each other. We don't go by gametes or chromosomes or anything when we interact between each other. Generally, we'll associate. Well, and we had this discussion before because I wanted to come in to help with the mic, but really, we had this discussion before. I don't really want to rehash it, but I think it's more of how people perceive themselves, and I can't say I know where we get our identity. Why do I personally identify as a man, or how it happens? Why is that line? Why am I heterosexual and I'm not gay? There might be a whole combination of factors, and I don't think it's that different from one another for a person to genuinely associate their identity to female, even if they're born male. I think that's fair to say. I think that's something that was documented, demonstrated, and there are people and there are transsexual and are transgenders that feel that way. And I think the argument is not to have an ontological understanding on are they really what they're saying they are, or should they integrate society the way they wish to be interacted with. I think that's the main issue. And I have a few transgender friends, and mostly they're not activists. They just want to live their life and be treated the way they want to be treated. But yeah, and I agree there are militants that are more radical, but there's in any movement. And they shouldn't be the one dictating how we should treat the whole of the trans people, because they deserve more respect than that. Anyway, that's my view.
Yeah, no, and again, I respect them for being people. And again, I respect their right to live their life the way they want. But I don't respect when they try to change other people's belief by coercion, by force, by cancellation, by legislation. This is something that goes antithetical to a productive society.
Yeah, but I gotta tell you, I see more trans people content from people just raging out against them. If I ever go on Twitter, the only references I see from about trans people, it's all TERFs or conservative that just lashes out at what new trans people, and I'm not even sure half the time if what they're publishing is even true. I think there's a lot of rage bait currently, and it seems the problem is really blown out of proportion relative to what size it really is, because any one trans athlete will just the story will spin around the world 3 times before we get over it. So I think it's been blown a bit out of proportion because for what it really is. Even if I agree, and I agree that trans women shouldn't really participate in women's sports, but I agree with that. I don't want to just get into that specific topic, but I think there's a bit of rage baiting that's currently happening with trans people, and that might be one of the only way forward for conservative, because they don't have anything to talk about, frankly.
I agree. So just a little segue here, a little side thing. So I'm on Facebook right now, and one of the groups I'm in is Theist and Atheist Debate Group. And I have this person, we're just going to call him Alex. His name is Alex. And he apparently has been going around telling people that I am a troll, that I'm an idiot, which is fine. Again, opinions. But he's incapable of actually having a conversation on the actual discussion in philosophy, right? Especially when it comes to atheism, things of that nature, right? So I just messaged, I just put something on the Facebook group that said, look, I am one of the most straightforward interlocutors around. I really do believe that. I'm live. Bring your argument, right? Bring your argument. And then he posts something like, or just like this. He's like, apparently a lot of people don't like you, and it really shows. Who cares? I'm not here to be liked. I don't care about that. That's just feelings. Why do I care if somebody doesn't like me? A lot of shitty people don't like me. I don't like a lot of shitty people. Who cares? He says, you don't believe in God, yet you're not an atheist. Hilarious. Because he's ignorant when it comes to philosophy, right? Because we all know that atheism is the belief there is no God. And he puts something from somebody else who says, he's an idiot. He is arrogant about being an idiot. He will literally just appeal to his one authority, which is not logic or reason, but merely outdated definitions from somebody who's no longer an authority and likely never was, which makes no sense. My paper is completely logical. It is valid. It is sound. I appeal to many authoritative sources, many citations from many experts in fields relating to philosophy, biology, cosmology. All somebody has to do is show me the evidence. But you see in these types of struggle sessions, Dan and Steve, when I open them up and I'm like, look, you think that I'm wrong, all you got to do is have an adult conversation with me, but then I get this guy like Alex on a Facebook group that lacks the ability to do so. He literally will lack the ability to come on in, have an adult dialogue, show me and tell me why he thinks I'm wrong. They will not do it. And I find the same thing to happen in these transgender types of dialogues. Very few people are willing to come in and say why they're wrong. If you notice, a lot of them just have echo chambers. They won't even allow people like me in to their chamber, not that I really want to, but they don't have open I don't see a lot of open dialogues on these issues. What I see is echo chambers where they're just going to reinforce their own beliefs, which people can argue what's happening now because I have two people that agree with me, but the difference is I welcome other people. If you think I'm wrong, come in and let's make it an actual struggle session. But they don't do it. Why? What is it the reason why you think they will not have a productive dialogue with somebody who does not agree with them and rather try to insult me and claim that I'm a troll or that I'm insulting the atheists when both of you are atheists in here? People know that I support atheism. So how am I bashing on atheists when I literally support atheism more than I would theism? I do tend to atheism more than theism, but I'm not an atheist. So why would I do that? I actually support Satanism, for Pete's sake. Why? Just somebody tell me how I'm not understanding why these people won't act like adults and just talk rather than just say I'm an idiot, say I'm not logical. Yeah, I literally write my blog on logic. So what am I missing here, guys?
I just think people just want to feel good and their information sources won't be that much different from their social groups. I think people I don't believe people want to actually seek the truth. They just want to feel good about how they feel and just reinforce their opinion and seek out that confirmation bias that's acting. I think it makes everybody feel better than being confronted with contrary opinions. I think that's
I fully agree with you on that. I fully agree with you on that. However, what do you do when somebody you know is practically wrong? Like, I have certain knowledge. You have certain knowledge, right? And what I can believe to be knowledge is something that's going to take a lot more than just convincing to change my mind, right? If I know that X equals X, you're going to need a hell of a lot of evidence to convince me that X is not equal X, because that is a metaphysical necessity, logical necessity that exists as true in all possible worlds. You need there'd be a substantial amount of evidence that would be required to change your mind on that. Matter of fact, I don't think it could be done. But I still like to people argue to find out where the flaw is in their reasoning, right? Because if I'm certain on something like that, then yeah, I'm probably not going to change my mind on it. But there are other things that don't have certainty, such as, my positions on transgender, on atheism. These are not certainties. So don't you think a person, if they really had a strong argument, would go in and say, okay, Steve, let me give you the actual evidence of why you're wrong, rather than a very superficial argument that is basically, here's a dictionary. That's not an argument. They never really dive into my paper. They never really dive into the logic. And sometimes when they do, they get it wrong. and then I show them logically where they're wrong, and I can prove that they're wrong logically, and they still don't accept it. What do you do in those situations?
I don't think we can. Do you think we can appeal to logic for any and every subject? I'm not sure. I genuinely asking.
No, but I think that when somebody submits a very logical argument, there's an objective fact of the matter, whether you can evaluate it as at least being valid. And sound, yeah, there's some subjectivity there. I will grant that. It depends on the argument, right? But there are some arguments that are clearly valid and sound, regardless of your belief. And one of which, I, for example, I'll give you an example. So, like, you know, I as you guys know, I blocked Darwin to Jesus because he just would not stop DMing me on something he was completely wrong about, and then started trolling me on it. And then he started trolling me outside DMs. So I'm like, look, I don't need that. I'm not going to put up with your sophistic trolling. And what it was basically a non sequitur fallacy can only apply to a deductive argument. Why? Because in non sequitur literally is defined to mean invalid. And the only thing that can be valid or invalid is a deductive argument. So I can show him that, right? I can show them the evidence for that. That's one way you can show that he's logically incorrect. Or I can just show something that is logically valid. Like another guy on Facebook, I have a valid modus tollens. He would argue may not be sound, whatever, but it is definitely valid, right? Because valid is objectively, you can go say, oh, look, this is a valid rule of inference called modus tollens, and he swears that it is called affirming the consequent. Well, anybody that knows anything about logic can go look at the form for affirming the consequent and look at the form of modus ponens and compare and see which one my argument is. My argument is clearly modus tollens. P implies Q, not Q, therefore not P. That is not affirming the consequent. Affirming the consequent is P implies Q, Q therefore P. Right? Because you're literally affirming the consequent. That's what it means. You have to have two premises to affirm the consequent. He doesn't understand this. He thinks the material condition for P implies Q is a logical fallacy called affirming the consequent by the way that P and Q are instantiated, right? What I have for their propositions, which is impossible. Impossible. But he doesn't know enough about logic to understand that. And so when people are telling me I'm wrong, it is because their levels of knowledge on basic stuff is usually deficient.
Yeah, but well, actually, I agree. I don't think people are really versed in that way, and that must be off-putting for somebody that doesn't understand the concept. And I'm in no way an expert in any of this. I think I can follow, but I'm not an expert in any slight shape or form. But
that's fine.
yeah,
I mean, none of us
think,
are, but this is just our opinions.
Yeah, and furthermore, I think overall we've got lazy about how to argue, understanding a topic. We sort of kind of learn slogans, and that sounds good, and we repeat them and think it's sufficient to argue for something that we like. Because understanding a topic is a lot of work. It's arduous. That's a lot of reading and introspection and accepting that you may be wrong about something. That's not something I think most people have to do. And everybody have access to social media, so everybody will present as an expert, even though they might have.
I don't think so. I don't think they present as an expert. Again, these are all. You know what's so funny is, again, I tell people all the time, my stuff is basic. It's all undergrad stuff, right? Most of the stuff I even talk about is level 100. It's intro level stuff. Some of which can be level 2 or 300. I grant that, okay? But I don't expect a lot of people who don't like these topics to know, a coursework 300 level subject, okay? I get that. But most of what I talk about is pretty damn basic. And my argument is like, look, if I can understand it, anybody can. But the evidence is that even my basic understanding is correct. And when I'm not sure of something, I ask. I just did that on Twitter because on Facebook, somebody was talking about Poisson distributions. And I had to really think about what was really going on with them because I haven't had statistics in a very, very long time. And so I posted on Twitter, is it me that has the misconception, or is it Grok, right? I'm going to try to pronounce it right. It's not Grok. It's, what is it, Grok? Grok. Or is it Wolfram Alfram? Because I got different answers from asking AI as I did from Wolfram Alpha. And then, so I'm thinking, am I misunderstanding about how to properly do a Posian distribution because it's been so many years? So I wouldn't trust somebody to take me for statistical advice, right? Don't, right? You want to go, hey, Steve says about statistics this, therefore this. No, I barely remember statistics, but I at least had the basics where I knew the difference between, like one standard deviation and two, right?
Yeah.
And so you can go look that up, right? You can go look. If I tell you, what one standard deviation is in decimal, decimal. You can go look up right on that, right? It's objective. You don't have to take my word for it.
Yeah, should be available.
What is it? 90 and it's 60. What is the rule? 60. I haven't even think about it. 60. It's 68, 95, 99.7 rule. Yeah. So standard deviations. You have 68 for 1, 98 for 2, 99.7 for 3. These are all objective things. So if I say, hey, one standard deviation is 68%, you can go look this up. But that's something that I wouldn't trust myself to like be, I'm absolutely sure of this. I still have to remember some of this stuff, right? Because it's just something I don't deal with a lot.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyways,
but I think where the... Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just saying my coffee is like kicking in hard right now.
Okay. Yeah, because I think for where we could disagree on where it is, I don't think it's about the basics if we lay out. So here's the biological the concept of what's a male of a species, and then you lay out the premise conclusion. I kind of would agree with that, but I don't think we're arguing the same. We're not arguing on the same premise. Sorry, because for this whole disagreement about trans people, personally, I don't think that sex is the issue. Like I was saying earlier, it's about the social interaction, social integration, social acceptance of it, and where sex apply, where it be medical, if it is to measure like combat sport, I agree. There is a physical, biological measure that should be taken there, but I don't think the level of what's the word I'm searching for? It's not hatred, but the level of disdain that's promulgated towards trans people based on those key issues, and then just bring it all back to you're not women, so and close and shut case. I think that's a bit harsh. I don't think that's proper. That's not conducive to have just to better accept people. And like I was saying, I don't think it's that far off from how we treated gay people in the past, and we need just to adopt and accept and just figure out how we can live together and just set the proper boundaries instead of saying that you're inhuman, just get out of our every species.
But that's what acceptance is, right? I mean, gays fought for a long time to be accepted, and they worked hard for that. Now, unfortunately, they're even suffering from this radical gender ideology. And they're very much against it. This is why the LGP wants to split from the TQ+. And I agree that they should. They're not the same goals. The gay people have reached their goals. They're allowed to get married, absolutely. They should. They should live their life any way they want. Love is love. I don't care. I'm happy for them, right? Gay people are just like anybody else. They just happen to like the same sex or love the same sex. Okay, great. I have no issue with that whatsoever. None. Literally none. Right? But they're not out there trying to argue that there's something that they're not. They're not out there trying to convince people that they're biologically something that they're not. And that's a huge difference. And this is what I mean by acceptance, is that, okay, gays fought to be accepted and have the same rights as anybody else. They've gotten there. But now you have the trans community riding upon that, wanting even more. by
But
wanting people to
they
be
aren't
convinced of
really.
ontological. Well, they are kind of though.
But there are some activists, and I agree there are people that are pushing it too far and going overboard. But I don't believe that's remotely the majority of trans people
You
who
know
are
what?
doing that.
It sure seems like it because they're the most vocal though.
Yeah, sure, but they're the most vocal, so they're the most that they're the one that we see. What like Dylan Mulvaney was.
Uh-huh.
So that was a vocal trans activist. That was so we're seeing our face everywhere, but that's not every trans people. I think the vast majority just want to be chill, left alone, and we treat them like we treat white supremacists. Not every white dude is Nick Fuentes.
Oh yeah, yeah, of
So
course. Well, okay, it's funny you mentioned that because this guy that I just talked about from the atheist theist debate group, he's I literally say, look, I'm live on Twitter right now. He's like, well, that's a Nazi platform. Elon Musk is a racist and Nazi. And that just shows a lot about you. I'm like, oh my fucking god. I'm like, dude, that just shows me your character. That a lot of people use Twitter. A lot of people use Twitter. And if you're not ballsy enough to go into a live hangout on Twitter and you have to say that, oh, it's a Nazi platform, that just tells me that you're not capable of having an adult conversation. Because I guarantee it, I can say, oh, well, let's have it on StreamYards. Let's have it on Meets. Let's have it on whatever. And he would have find some excuse not to come and talk to me like an adult. I guarantee it. I guarantee it.
yeah,
And that's what I'm saying. I'm so sick of these mental morons, all coming off all aggressive and insulting, trying to label me a troll, but at the same token will not ever try to actually up their game to try to repudiate me at an academic level. And I mean a basic academic level. That's it. So
yeah, and I gotta say, for even when we disagree, I never felt that you were, and even when you hosted people who had harsh disagreement with you, seems to me you were always respectful and open to their opinion before you lashed out. So
yeah, I try.
I don't think there's an issue to be scared.
I really do try. I give people, look, I start off neutral, 50, right? I start off neutral with anybody I come across. And then as conversations progress, I move them up and down, right? And that really depended upon their level, their honesty, and things of that nature, right? But I always try to keep it within a central area, right? Some kind of mean average of what a conversation should be like. I even did that with Darwin to Jesus, didn't I? Steve was there. I really did try to talk to him like like an adult person, but he kept trying to go back into his troll mode, and so there's just no productive dialogue to be had with that, right? And so when people try to insult me personally, I just 90% of the time I just ignore it, but it's not an argument. Call me whatever you want. I don't care. I really don't. But that's not a defeater to my arguments. And when they're so superficial that they have to say, oh, well, I'm not going to go into Twitter space because Elon Musk is a Nazi, I'm like, you're just insane. You're just nobody I want to deal with anyways,
Yeah, that's
And I know a lot of
that's a
people
cop out.
Oh, sorry. A lot of people are like, I haven't streamed in a while, but I haven't felt like it. I just posted that like my blood work was the first time it's been normal in a year. And so a lot of things are happening in my life that are going positively, and so I feel like streaming maybe more often, right? This is why I'm going to try to stream every Saturday night, because I feel like streaming. Before I didn't for a very long time, and people know this. So thank you for noticing that you caught a live. I'm trying. I am trying to do lives. And he says he's had to see this as a topic, but pick a topic. These are struggle sessions. I'm willing to talk about whatever you want. I really am. I mean, criticize me for any of my philosophical beliefs or anything like that, because that's what I want to talk about, philosophy. And this does dovetail into philosophy, obviously, right? Because we had talked about dualism. We had talked about gendered identities. That does really dive into the core of philosophy when it comes to what's called identity theory. Axiom, I invited you to speak, and Hucker, I invited you to speak as well. So come on up if you'd like to speak. Or not.
No. In the meantime, what was that? I saw you posted you had a new Facebook group about epistemology of religion.
Yeah, it's not my. It's
Something?
yes. It's called Epistemology of Religion. You can look at find it on Facebook. It's not. I didn't start the group. Somebody else did, and he just invited me to become admin because I guess he liked my work. And then he invited some other people that I knew that I really liked, and then I started inviting people that I knew about philosophy, and so we got about 40 people right now, and I'd say the vast majority of them are very good interlocutors, because I'm huge fans of certain people in philosophy. If you're in the social media, check out people like David Paulman, Ben Bladespeak Watkins. Who else we got? Emerson Green. We got Secular Outpost. His name's Jeff. He's great. I love Graham Oppie, obviously. Who else? I do like people like Braxton Hunter, even though he's a theist. He's from Trinity Radio. I love having discussions with him. And so there are a lot of people out there that really do like talking about philosophy, and that can do so on this more, I hate to say non-mundane level, but again, when I look at a lot of Facebook groups and all I see them doing is saying, oh, you believe in a sky fairy to theist or sky daddy, that's not productive discourse. That has nothing to a dialogue. And so I like to have the dialogue elevated where you have actual conversations between atheists and theists, and that only happens in very specific groups. Other groups will just allow anything, and I find them to be very boring, very puerile, very tedious. So this epistemic group that I've joined, this group on epistemology of religion, seems to be so far dealing with things at a little bit higher level on epistemology and evidentialism. And just recently, Kyle Alexander, if you guys know his name, Kyle Alexander made a video, and he wrote this masterful thesis kind of thing, and it's quite good. It's quite good what I've read it for so far, and he's an undergrad, but he wrote what is it called? What is it called when you write like what's it called? A mono something. I can't think of the term.
Sorry, I don't know.
It starts. Anyways, he called it the educative matrix, a theodicy for the universal growth of all beings. A monograph. That's what it's called. A monograph. So he wrote a monograph based upon the theodicy for evil and divine hiddenness, and he actually has some traction on this. And I know that David Paulman wrote about the problem of evil as well. So a lot of people that are undergrad that don't have a bachelor's degree still can write about philosophy and do very, very well. But you know what I don't do, dude? I don't go to Kyle and go, by the way, your theodicy sucked. You're just an idiot. Here's the definition. No, I don't know enough about the topic to criticize his work. But when I read his work, I definitely can tell it is on a very scholarly level. He's a theist. He believes in God. That doesn't mean he can't write something on a very scholarly level. And I don't have the background to really dive into it to say he's wrong. I can just say, oh, look, there's some parts in here that I really think are interesting. He talks about theistic Bayesian learning. He talks about confirmational holism, which I do think is something that exists. He talks about the axiology of theism. And I will read more of it when I get a chance. But here's a person, again, who puts his money where his mouth is and just says, here's my argument. Here's my paper on this, or in this case, it was a monograph. Dissect it as you will. And I respect that. But I also respect the fact that I'm not as knowledgeable when it comes to theodicies as I could be to try to even, objectively evaluate his monograph. But when people argue against my work, they're not being objective because they don't realize that they're not at a level to really be able to objectively evaluate my work. And I think that's the difference. It's self-realization. And I think that's the biggest issue that I run into. And maybe we'll kind of leave it there, is that most of us have self-realization of our limits. And a lot of people online don't. And I think that is the biggest problem that I run into, is when I have people like on Facebook, like right now when this guy's arguing against me, saying that, I'm an idiot, I'm a narcissist, whatever. He lacks the basic ability to have the educational level discussions that I'm used to, because he doesn't understand the subject matter, because the self-realization just is not there. And so I think that's something we maybe can leave it on for tonight. I was hoping my friend Josh would join, but it looks like he's tied up. And I know Steve's still at work. But it's a monograph. Thank you, Kimomaki, in live chat. But I think that's a big problem. A lot of people just don't have self-realization.
Yeah, that, and if they even bother to read your blog in the first place,
No,
anyone could just go and
they do. Some of them say they do, but then when I ask them, okay, can you steel man my argument? Not a single solitary freaking one could. The only time I've ever had anybody say, hey, look, I'll objectively read your paper and I'll give you my objective review on it. And they're an atheist. And I said, okay, fine, if you can understand it. They not only understood it, and I apologize to them for that. I will absolutely apologize. If I think that you don't understand my argument and you also show me that you do, I will absolutely apologize and take that back, right? And not only did he understand it, he wrote a peer review on Academic EDU of my paper and agreed with it. And he reviewed it and said, look, this is correct logic, this is valid, this is sound, and I happen to actually agree with the conclusion from an atheist, because he knew this, he understood this subject, and he's like, this is a well thought out paper. But when people tell me my paper is wrong and they cannot steel man it and they can't answer simple questions about it, why would I take them seriously as somebody who is intelligent enough on the material to be able to actually determine whether it's right or wrong or not? I wouldn't. Clearly, I couldn't. Oh, Red is live too. Yeah. Oh, my audio's low again? I don't see why. I just fixed my audio. It should be fine. But yeah, Red's like.
I think on Facebook it was a bit quiet, but before going, I think Axiom was unmuted for a bit. I don't know if he had something you wanted to contribute.
Axiom, what's
Yeah,
up, my friend?
Hey guys, I was just listening to the trans discussion, and seems to me like the goal with trans people is to make them as happy and productive members of society as possible. And with that goal in mind, there's a lot of chatter out there, but I always go back to what does good legislation look like around this issue? And I think it's what the whole issue funnels into. Ultimately, we need to get laws passed, common sense laws to, help these people. For me, the main issue I see is that, sports, especially combat sports, I don't like the idea of, biological women being hurt by people who are not born biologically female and competing against them. So some type of separate league seems to me to be the best compromise, in that space for now. But other than that, other than combat sports, is there any other legislation you guys can think of that we need laws around, for or against trans practices?
And that's what I was going to ask you, for or against. I mean, like, again, laws tend to be regulatory, meaning that they prevent something, right? They prohibit most of the time, right? A law is something that you cannot do. So it regulates our actions. And so I don't know if there's a law that we need to say, look, that boys can't be on girls' teams. I don't know if that should be legislated like that. It should just be common sense. And it should be at the school level.
I think making and I don't think legislation is the better way, but just putting trans people on par with other protected classes would be a start. I think, just so so it's not just tolerated to discriminate upon it, but but overall, I agree with what Axiom says. The main goal should be better integration and make them productive members of society, and yeah, and I go further than just not just combat sport, but I think most sports. Somebody who went through puberty has a clear advantage, but there might be something we need to figure out about sport. But yeah, not through law.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
for me, sports.
right.
Go,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead, Steve.
No, go.
I was going to say for me, sports is just the main, especially combat sports. But it seems to me like this issue, it's really spun up. It's an election year, and it really spins up the right. And this seems to be the issue that they're focusing on for this election cycle. It's probably going to die down after the election, I would say, and hopefully we can get to some common sense legislation. I do think you need some control at the local level, but I also think that you also do need some type of federal regulation to get involved. When you see like something like gay marriage, you leave it up to the states or whatever. Then some states vote against it, some states vote for it. So I do like the idea of a good federal legislation at some point to really hammer things out and really promote well-being for trans people, just like we try to do with gay people.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the federal level. I used to be, put it under states' rights, but it should be more of a federally regulated thing. I'm okay with that. But again, when we're talking about rights as far as non-exclusivity, so we don't exclude people because of their beliefs and things of that nature, that's ubiquitous, right? You can't say, hey, look, I'm not going to hire you because you're a Christian. I'm not going to hire you because you're an atheist. That's the same reason why we can't say, I'm not going to hire you because you're gay, or I'm not going to hire you because you're trans. There should be protected things, but just like anyone else.
No, but actually, that's something because there are written in the book protected class that it's not something that's ubiquitous
it's sex,
upon everybody. There are something we are allowed
sex,
to discriminate against.
It's sex, gender, religion, creed, nationality, place of origin, gender, or sex. Those are things that are protected under the what's called the Civil Rights Act of 1964. They're enumerated. There's like 7 or 8 of them, right? And so those are the specific things that are enumerated. And I'm okay with that as far as, because those are the marginalized groups that generally needed more because they were being persecuted, right? There were people that were attacking people for just being gay. Gay bashing was a thing, still is a thing, but it's probably nowhere near as prevalent as it was in the 70s. Those should be, I think, prosecuted a little bit fully. And I have no issue with that. Why? Because if you attack somebody physically merely because they're gay, you're a piece of shit, and you deserve to go to jail for a very long time. So I think there should be bigger penalties for hate crimes like that. If you attack somebody merely because they're black, you should go to jail for a longer period of time because you're a shitty person and you don't deserve to be on the street. So I'm okay with those kinds of special prosecutions and special laws because those groups have been historically marginalized because of the very nature of things that are intrinsic properties to them. So I'm okay with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, and I would put trans people within those categories also, just to make sure either we fit in the sex well, I don't think it fits really within sex, but that to include transgender within the protected classes, I feel, and also I'm Canadian, so we already have that here. That's your business. I don't want to dictate how people do their shit in the US, but yeah, but basically, I think that would be a common decency to include transgender people as protected classes, just so it's
agree,
not.
But here's the thing. There's and I hate to use the term slippery slope on this because it's not really a slippery slope, but couldn't it be argued that everyone should be a protected class at a certain point where there's no protected class because the only people that are being excluded now are kind of like the white male, right? I mean,
No.
Well, hang on. Let me hear me out. When you eliminate women, gays, blacks, Latinos, it's like what group do you have left? So wouldn't it make sense, maybe, and again, spitballing here.
Felons?
Hang on. Wouldn't it make more sense maybe to have a law that says, look, anytime you have a crime that is motivated by any of these things, which is based upon sex, religion, or anything like that, then it should be prosecuted fully. And that I'm okay with because, again, white people would fall under that, right? If somebody's beat up merely because they're white, they should have the same protections as somebody who's black that got beat up merely because they're black. So that's what when they're talking about protective classes, they're talking about you shouldn't be beat up merely because you're a woman, merely because you're a man. This is why I don't like when it just says, okay, like women are in a protective class. I don't think that should be the case. Maybe I think it should be there are no protective classes. It's just the protective classes are the gender itself, right? If you're beat up because you're a man, you're beat up because you're a woman, those are the protections, rather than specifically saying because you're a woman, you're in a protected class. It should be because you're this gender and you got beat up because you were that gender. Maybe that's how we should go look at it from a retribution or criminal aspect of it. If we're going to look into penalties, did this person commit the crime because the person happened to be a specific skin color? Yes. Okay, then they get additional penalties. Shouldn't matter whether they're black or shouldn't matter whether they're white.
So yes and no. All right, I'm gonna hop in on this one because I'm finally fucking home.
Cool.
Yeah. So yes and no. So there is. Yes, I agree that it should be prosecuted that way. Whereas if you're taking one specific part of an individual, whether that be their race, age, ethnicity, culture, or the color of their skin, yeah, okay, fine. I agree that all of it should be fair ground all the way. Here's where I say no, because are they arguing that? Because 9 times out of 10, women will blame the white man, and you notice how women blame the white man. It's always the race and the sex. It's always that particular group that are the pedos of society, that are the murderers of society, the naturally violent of society. This is the lie that they perpetuate. So how is it that we are supposed to have a constructive conversation based on what a person specifically did if that social stigma is stopping people from having that conversation to begin with and immediately jumping to conclusions?
I don't think anybody is stopping us from having the conversation, but that I think fundamentally it would be if I would be fired from my job because I'm white. That's something I could take to court and just get compensation.
I would be for
that's why I said it should be.
court.
It should be because it was based upon
It is.
some kind of intrinsic property, which it is, and I'm okay with those types of laws. Absolutely, am I okay? But I think a lot of people in the transgender community want more than that. They want special privileges, and I don't know what they're asking for. And I've asked them. I want to have that conversation, but nobody seems to be able to tell me what is the special privileges they think they're entitled to that somebody else isn't entitled to.
And
I don't-
100% of the time, those privileges, or no, those are privileges that they're listing as opposed to rights.
I agree.
Hold on.
Driving is a privilege, not a right.
What is?
Driving, for example, is a privilege. It's not a right.
Yeah. For example, driving is a privilege. It's a privilege for people who are over a certain age that can legally be held accountable for a certain. That's a good example.
Yeah. Could you name one for trans people?
What trans right that they're fighting for?
Yeah.
The right for the state to pay for transgender for transition therapy
As being medically
not-
necessary. When it's
Yeah,
not.
it's not. It's not. That is not a right. That is a privilege.
Okay. Wow. Okay. I do we have the time to get into gender dysphoria and?
I've got a few more minutes. I mean, now that Steve's here, I can go.
Yeah.
I can go a little while longer, but I am a little fading from my coffee, and I am getting a little hungry. But yeah, go ahead.
I don't. Why? Basically, it goes if we believe there's legitimately a condition that's gender dysphoria that creates just extreme mental anguish about the way your body mismatches your identity. I think it would be fair to provide health care on the same level we do for people who suffers depression or ADHD or anything that, and like XM was saying, is the objective is to make better, productive citizens that contributes. So if like hormones can be is covered by insurance, or if it's covered by Medicare, Medicaid, I'm not sure. But if there was a portion of that that could be handled state-wise at the same level that it is for other mental issues, I think that would be better for
All right.
society as a whole.
All right, let's dive into that because this is a great topic. I do believe they should get health care as far as psychological. We all agree upon that. Yes.
Depends.
Oh,
Like,
I think
I'm a
that
little bit on the.
look, it's a psychological issue, and I think that psychological issues are mental health. So I
I
think
get
they
that
should
it
get
is a
access to mental
psychological
health.
issue. But if we're specifically talking about sexual dysmorphia, dimorphia, I don't know.
Gender dysmorphia,
Gender
dysphoria.
dysmorphia. Okay, so that is
No,
the
dysphoria.
term that we.
Dysphoria, not
that-
dysmorphia. Dysmorphia is when you like look at yourself and you think you're fat when you're skinny.
Okay.
Dysphoria is the incongruence
dysphoria.
between dysphoria is the incongruence between your biological
that's-
sex and what
that's
you
the
think
term.
that you are.
That's
Yeah.
the term we'll use from now on, so I don't get confused. That'd be
Dysphoria.
great. All right. So if the condition is sexual dysmorphia versus the condition being depression, okay, you have a lot more adults that grow up and develop depression than you do someone that has sexual dysmorphia. Meanwhile, sexual dysmorphia, more often than not, as the kid is growing up, going through puberty, more often than not, like a 9-to-1 ratio, the child will grow out of the sexual dysmorphia, learn how they are.
Dysphoria.
Maybe they'll be bisexual or gay. Dysphoria, sorry. Maybe they'll be bisexual. Maybe they'll maybe they'll be gay. Maybe they'll be.
Oh, I just got a hiccup.
Oh boy.
There you go. That was
Sorry.
yours.
Am I back now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Maybe they'll grow up and be slightly more effeminate as a man or slightly more masculine as a woman. A lot of the time, gender dysphoria ends up being a condition that people just grow out of.
I agree with all that. However, they do grow out of it. But depression is a mental condition, and depression should have access to mental health things. And if people are having depression because of gender dysphoria, I'm all for medical help. I'm all for that. I don't think that should. I think that should fall under depression because gender dysphoria tends to lead to depression, and they should get psychological help to help deal with that. However, when it comes to things like sex reassignment surgery, that's not a viable way to cure this because it's never been a cure. And people that have gone through gender reassignment surgery, almost all of them still report gender dysphoria. It doesn't alleviate that.
I'll have to check what the. Sorry.
Let me finish real quick. Now, hormone replacement therapy is a lot cheaper, right? But again, why is it that they should have to fund the money to convert the body rather than convert the mind when the mind is a lot cheaper?
And because if it works, actually, and I'm not advocating for HRT or sex reassignment surgery, I want the best treatment for what it works. I haven't checked in a while, and it seems transition was the better effective treatment for dysphoria. Seems to be most people, and yeah, there are disasters. I acknowledge that they do exist, and that's why we don't do sex reassignment surgery on teens. For you tell him, Steve, I'm not sure what's your actual name, but they I don't believe it's surgery is okay. It's Steve. Yeah.
Steve,
Okay.
So you
But
can call
yeah,
me
I
Dave
don't.
so that you're not. I'm Steve Dave, so you just call me Dave. That'll be
Okay,
that'll
cool.
be easiest way to do it.
Yeah, but I don't think surgery is the proper way to go for maybe a 13-year-old, but eventually just to make it accessible, because what we don't want it's people just we want to make everybody just functional human being in society. So I'll go with whichever treatment works the best. If it's psychological, we'll go with that.
Well, see, one
Seems
major
right now
argument.
surgery works quite well. So that's what I'm going with.
So I would argue that with a point, and I'll hold my hand up to this. I don't know the exact statistics. Steve, if you wanted to look this up while I'm making this point, what are the percentage of people who after transitioning go through detransitioning? Because that is
I know it's increasing. I don't know the exact numbers, but I do
yeah,
know it is increasing long term.
Yes, it is increasing over the long term because a lot of these people are realizing that the surgery does not help. It did not make them any more of a woman or a man that they wanted to be.
Right.
And,
in fact, all it did was interfere with their sexual function, if anything.
Yeah, and largely, from a society standpoint, a lot of the trans community turned their back on these detransitioners once they realized that they're not falling in with the rest of the herd.
That's a great question. Why is that? Why are detransitioners so frowned upon by the trans community when they're, realizing that they made a mistake? Why should the trans community care? They should be like, look, you made a mistake. We're happy that you figured it out. Go fix yourself and live your life and be happy. Why
that's exactly what it should be, but surprisingly, it's not, because it goes completely against the ideology. However, back to what Dan said about the surgery being a point where it cures. I'd love to know the numbers of that. I'd love to know that statistic that I mentioned, about what percentage of people that went through transitioning surgery actually are going through detransitioning right now in order to restore themselves, because that'll either prove or disprove the effectiveness of that surgery actually curing sexual dysphoria. I was about to say morphia again. Sexual dysphoria.
Yeah. I think you're right. But here's the thing: it is increasing, though. Matter of fact, they're suing doctors. Doctors are now being sued for malpractice more than ever on this, and you hear more and more stories of people coming out and saying, "Look, I regret this. Don't do it. I regret this. Don't do it." You have like Scott. What's his last name? Nugent. Oh my God, what's his last name? Scott.
I'll forget.
I forget his last name. I'm so sorry, Scott. Nugent. Scott Nugent. Trans man Scott Nugent. He regrets having his phallic surgery. He has complications on his arm now. They removed, a huge big thing around his forearm to make this phallic thing.
Oh it's way worse.
Yeah, and
for female to male.
Yeah, and he totally regrets that. He is having numbing in his hand. He's having infections, major complications. They didn't tell him anything about this, although he still lives his life as a male, and he has every right to. But he realizes that he's still biologically a woman, and that he should never have done these surgeries because he was just transsexual. He just wants to live his life as a man, and that's fine, And he's he considers himself a lesbian because he's a woman that likes women, but his gender is man. But he never says that he's an actual biological male, though. He knows he had to have this surgery, and he thought that it would fix his incongruency. It fixed his gender dysphoria, and it didn't. And it made him so nothing but pain in his life. I've talked to him, in DMs in private, and I follow him. And he was on Matt Walsh's What is a Woman, and I can tell this guy's legit. He really regrets it. I really like the guy. And he wants to come on the show one of these days, and as soon as I find his availability where he can.
I'd love to ask this man a few questions.
Yeah, no, but right now he's going through, like I said, some problems with his hand because he had this completely experimental phallic surgery, which he knows now was experimental, and that he absolutely regrets it. And then
that's the key word there, though, Steve. That's the key word. Experimental. A lot of this science is brand fucking new, and a lot of doctors are approaching it as they would plastic surgery, which essentially is what it is in most cases.
You're right, and somebody makes a good point on my live chat. They say, this is somebody named Outside the Cube. That's new. I don't recognize that name. He says, the reason why they speak against detransitioners is because the detransitioners begin to tell the truth about it all. Agreed. 100%. I think you're right on that.
I think I no lies detected on that one.
Yep. They're not only telling the truth, but they're also speaking from personal experience. And they're warning people, don't do this. They're telling people, look, I'm sorry, but let's be blunt here. We're all having adult conversations. Most men are not want to have their dick inverted. Most men do not like this idea. Okay? Something is mentally wrong with you as a man that wants to have this happen because it's not something that's normal. And people will be like, well, you're saying it's abnormal. Yes, it is abnormal because if you take a statistics, a diverse group of men, you just, by random, you pick 100 men, not one of them is going to want to have their dick inverted and lose all sensation and lose the ability to climax, lose the ability to ejaculate. Most men are not going to want this, okay? And when they find these radical experimental procedures and they don't go as planned, and they all of a sudden they're taking part of the colon, and they're wondering why they have this canal that smells like fecal matter and that never heals properly and it gets infected because it's an experimental procedure that's not going to do what they think it's going to do. But how do they get to that point where they think that it is going to be some absolute magical cure that's going to literally turn their inverted penis into a vagina? How do they actually believe this?
Yeah, Steve, what if I told you you could have been talking to You Tell 'Em Stephanie Dave 8 years ago if I made that decision? I did the research. I looked at it.
You thought you might be a trans?
I was at first for the idea of transitioning into a woman in college.
Why?
And I was like, I don't know because
what was about you? I mean, were you thinking?
Well,
were
no,
you gay,
it's just because I was more. It's because I was more gentle than a lot of guys. Like, like I would notice this in high school.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
gotcha.
I would notice this in high school. Well, guys would be looking at the round parts of certain ladies on the track or anything like that. I'd be like, yeah, that sure is a woman. Because the personality is what does it for me, and I had to discover that myself.
Do you consider yourself bisexual?
To a degree, there's a joke around my friend group where I'm only 7% gay.
Okay. No, I totally get it. No, I totally get that.
Yeah. You totally get it. So back then I had to look it up, and there was so many like, oh, this is a brand new procedure and all this, and none of the science was really like saying that it was 100% available.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
I'm just checking right now. From the National Library of Medicine. So it seems for people who went under gender-affirming surgeries, there's about a 1% of people that regrets it.
There's only 1% of people that report regret it?
The long term is much. The long term is higher now. These are the
gotta be.
Yeah,
what is the year from that?
When they did the 1% number, they only looked at short-term self-reporting. I guarantee it because I've already looked into that. The 1% number comes from self-reporting from very small sample sizes.
That was
according to the
1,800 people. I'm sorry, 8,000 people.
Okay. Well, it's still a good enough population. We're talking about a minority of the minority, so that's still pretty...
I have to look at that. 8,000 is a very high sample size. Usually sample size is about 2,000.
Yeah, so...
I can give you the link if you'd like.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey guys, I asked ChatGPT that question too, and it's coming back with 1 to 2% of people that regret it.
Yeah, ChatGPT sucks. I don't use ChatGPT.
I hear you. No, I hear you, but so I have to see data. What do people actually say on the ground? Do they regret having the surgery or not? I know I can see people that tell me that they regret having LASIK surgery because they had a bad doctor or whatever. It doesn't mean that LASIK is bad, or maybe they just had a bad doctor. I'd want numbers of the people that are actually saying.
Remember, ChatGPT last update was 2022, so it's old data. But I just go by what I'm seeing. I've seen people talk about their detransitioning. I see people regretting it, right? So
okay.
Even if it's just a handful of people, it still happens. Like Steve, if you had transition, don't you think you would have regretted it at your age now?
Oh yeah, I probably would have regretted it down the line because nowadays I'm rocking a boss stash. That wouldn't have happened.
You became a man.
Yeah, I would have looked back at that and been like, wow, actually, there's a lot to like about being a man. There's a few things to like about being a man, and I really would have regretted it. And the smoking gun of the argument, because I wrestled with this for about a month straight. Should I go for it? Should I not go for it? Should I talk to a doctor about this? And what got me was, if I were to transition, and this is why I brought it up in the argument earlier, I would not be able to have children. And that's the thing that I admire about women the most, is they go through pregnancy and I can't.
Yeah, no, I can understand that, and especially as somebody as a teen in your formative years, a lot of people do think that. I never thought that. I never even crossed my mind that I might be female. I never had to decide whether I was gay or straight. But I've always been like so self assured that if I did see a guy that was like, oh yeah, he's a good looking guy, it never bothered me. I never thought that was gay or anything like that. Right, but that's as far as it went. I'd be like, yeah, this guy's a good-looking guy, but I never had an attraction where I'd want to physically do anything with them, But people that do, God bless them. Knock yourself out. Why would I care if I look at a guy and say, hey, look, that guy is a very attractive man, and somebody else says, look, that guy's a very attractive man, and I want to have sex with him? Why would I care? I'd be like, you know what? Go for it. If you guys are consenting adults, it doesn't even remotely faze me. But then you have the conservative far right who condemns that from a religious standpoint, right? They're like, oh, it's against God's law. Then I step in and I go, no, I don't believe God exists. Therefore, that's not an argument that's going to make sense to me, right? Trying to convince me that being gay is somehow wrong because of God's laws is not a very strong argument to me because I don't believe in God, right?
Yeah.
And so it's not going to convince me of anything, But
okay, so I got
right.
several statistics here. According to gendergp.com, in the UK, a survey of 3,398 attendees of a gender identity clinic found that just 16, about 0.47%, experienced transition-related regret. Even fewer went on to actually detransition and become detransitioners. Meanwhile, in the U.S., now this is where cultural boundaries are different. That was the UK. That was England. That was merry old England. In the U.S., a survey of nearly 28,000 people found that 8% of respondents reported some kind of detransition. Of this 8%, 62% did so temporarily due to societal, financial, or family pressures.
A lot. And that's something that when there's always comorbidities, such as depression, ADD, ADHD, and there's also societal factors. The problem is that a lot of these detransitioners were wrapped up in that. They were wrapped up in that social pressures, especially in high school where you have your friends all saying how cool it is to be pride. Pride. Oh, let's make you a female. That's societal pressures. It does happen. Absolutely.
It totally does.
I do got to start wrapping this up though, because
we could definitely detransitioners. That's definitely a topic that can be covered another time.
I'd like to get some in here though. I would love to find some.
Yeah, I would love to. If I could find anyone that is currently a detransitioner, I would love to talk to them.
Do me a favor, guys. For all you guys are listening, share these things out on social media, on Twitter. Let people know we're doing these struggle sessions on Saturday night, and ask people. Ask for detransitioner. Ask for trans people. Ask for people that actually want to put their views out there, because I respect that. Agree with people or don't agree with people. As long as people are civil about it. I have people in my live chat all the time that I don't agree with, but they're civil about it. And they're civil about it, then by all means, you're welcome. You're not only welcome, you're appreciated. I appreciate the people that disagree.
We love to disagree.
Yeah, life would be so boring if everybody agreed.
Yeah.
Tiny.
Thanks, guys. I got to run, but good talking with you. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a good one.
Good
Tiny
to hear you,
Magoo
Dan.
asks, what percentage of those do not regret their decision would be necessary to make it okay to transition? I don't know. I don't know if there's really a threshold for that, right? I think what we have to do is basically say, what good outweighs the bad? And right now, it does seem like there's a growing movement that the bad is being greater than the good, and especially when it comes to children.
That's a risk assessment, and that's true for all of medicine. There's no safe medicine
That's a
anywhere.
fair point. But these are such things that are so unchangeable. When a person, again, a lot of times these things are done not because to fix a gender dysphoric thing. It's been because, again, societal pressures. And again, I think that most of the time we're realizing that these things are not resolving the gender dysphoria. There might be a few cases of it, but not substantive enough to really make it normative. And so I think what we may have to do is basically just limit it right now to the most egregious cases. And I think that's what a lot of the I The National Health, was it the NHS over in England? They're kind of going that route. I think other countries are kind of going that route. They're pulling back from it being so easily obtainable that there has to be a long, arduous process for this for the most egregious cases, and then we'll see what happens with them.
And that's how you get pride parades.
Yeah.
Well, don't mix the parade in. That's
Yeah, I don't
that's
think
another
yeah.
that's another story
That's
because
a
we're
different
gonna get into
issue.
kink,
That was
and
a
yeah,
joke.
that's
We'll talk about
another.
it. We could do that another time.
bag of crabs.
Pride parades
Yeah.
because they're definitely not what they used to be.
I've got
But-
an image from one of YouTube's ads to show you, Steve. That
Right. But anyways, if you guys can help promote these things and promote my Twitter, because I do a lot on my Twitter more than anything else. And now that I'm feeling a little better, maybe I can do these more often. But for now, let's start with Saturday nights. We'll go with struggle session number 2 next week at somewhere between 6 and 8, depending on availabilities. Do you work next week, Steve?
let me check that schedule right now. I'm glad I've got the our job makes us download an app where all the schedule stuff is. No, I've got Saturday off, so
Yeah,
I'm
I think
available
I'm free
whenever.
next Saturday too. Actually, I know for a fact next week I have nothing planned. So
Cool.
we'll go from there. But like I said, I really would appreciate if you guys could help promote these things on Twitter, and just find people.
Smash the like
because,
button.
again,
Share it out.
That's the hardest thing: finding people willing to put their views on the line publicly. In an intelligent session like this, because we don't play the sophistic games. We're not going to allow bad argumentation. We're not going to allow Darwin to Jesus come in and just proselyte any longer. We're not going to allow things like that. We just want to have straightforward discussions with people that don't see eye to eye, and I love that. I thrive on that. So
Disagree, but disagree in a friendly way.
Right.
It's not that hard.
yeah, don't be like this idiot on Facebook that just says, "Oh, Steve's an idiot," and he just trolls. Whenever I ever
He
troll
doesn't-
anything, that's just
He doesn't
stupid.
understand the arguments that he clearly puts all the evidence forward to.
They don't understand the basics, and that's the problem. When people are so damn stupid, they don't even know the basics, and yet they think they actually know something about topic. That's when
Yep.
that's when they usually end up making it about, oh, you just hate trans people, or you're just emotional, or you're just trolling. When it's nothing like that at all. It's couldn't be further from the truth.
Right. But I mean, you're talking about the internet and you're talking about the human race. There's plenty of those idiots out there. But if you want all the good content, you just make sure you come here.
Yeah.
We'll keep it real.
And I'm jumping into your streams when I can too. So
Oh heck yeah, yeah.
right.
I took a break on the last one, but I'm planning on doing one. Yeah, actually, I could fit one in this coming Wednesday.
I should be.
It's usually
hit
Wednesday
me
nights I
up.
do it.
Hit me up, guys. All right, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you, Steve.
Yep, I will.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Tiny. Thank you, listeners. Thank you for hanging in there. Again, this was about 2 good hours, and I think this was very, very productive.
Heck yeah.
Awesome. All
Hey,
right.
cool. Have a good one.
Guys.
See you next time.
Yep.
Good night.
Good night. I'm gonna end this. Thanks for your help, Dan. By the way, you saved me. Peace.
Oh, that's
Bye.
cool. My pleasure.
I'm out.